NBC News after taking a look at allegations about the Clinton Foundation. Specifically, this case has not moved an inch in months, in their words. Tonight I spoke to Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway about that specific claim of a likely indictment, which has been walked back now. Hear a portion of that interview. Your candidate today on the stump, a quote from Donald Trump. It was reported that an avalanche of information is coming in. The FBI agents say their investigation is likely to yield an indictment. This has been walked back, the indictment portion, by Fox News, who originally reported it, and by NBC News, which has done subsequent reporting on this. Will Donald Trump amend his stump speech to walk back the same thing?
Well, the damage is done to Hillary Clinton, though. No matter how it's being termed, the voters are hearing it for what it is, a culture of corruption. We see reports tonight, confirmed by a different network, Brian, that there are new emails that have to do with Hillary Clinton in this Anthony Weiner laptop situation, I suppose. And, I mean, everybody, I think, suspected that out of 650,000, there might be something new there. And now we're getting confirmation. You hear from Jason Chaffetz, the chairman of the appropriate committee, saying that he just fears that we would have a President Hillary Clinton who would face all types of investigations. You have Chairman McCall saying that she could easily be impeached or indicted. In other words, you have responsible members of Congress coming forward and saying, based on what they know and what they see and what their experience is, that we could just be living this nightmare from basically the moment she was elected or took office. And I'm wondering why more Democrats aren't asking Hillary Clinton to step aside, get off the ticket for the good of the party, for the good of the election, for the good of the country. And why not a single Democrat, as far as I can tell, has unendorsed her or has said, I really don't want to run on the ticket with someone who's not under one but two FBI investigations.
As a lawyer, though, you would concede indictment is not only a term of art, it's a term of law, and that's a big difference, to use the expression likely indictment, when all the reporting is to the contrary.
Fine. It doesn't change what's in voters' minds right now. And you see it in your own polling. You see it in other polling, Brian, which is even though the polls were tightening before last Friday's explosive announcement by Mr. Comey, you see that voters are putting this in their large voter cauldron of impressions and issues and images and individuals and issues from which they eventually make a choice.
We should
Ohio, your reaction to these battleground polls? You're a pollster.
Well, we're thrilled to see those battleground polls from CNN today, Wolf, not least of which is because we feel like we get an anvil dropped on our head every day, and Hillary Clinton, relatively gets a free pass, and yet the voters are seeing right through that. They will not be fooled by what they're told is important to them this election. They're going to vote based on the issues and based on their own independent characterizations of these two individual candidates. I would point out that Ohio, as you know, Wolf, Ohio has traditionally been seen as the most important state for a Republican to win. No Republican has won the White House without Ohio, as it goes. And this year I see everybody backtracking on that, saying, well, it's not that important anymore. We know in the Trump campaign it's still important. North Carolina, a state which President Obama carried the first time in 2008, lost in 2012, and then Nevada, like Ohio, a state he carried twice. We're particularly pleased, Wolf, to see that Hillary Clinton just seems completely unable, almost congenitally unable, to bust past a 46 or 47% ceiling in these states that Obama carried with well over 50% of the vote.
So here's the question, Kellyanne. If Donald Trump is doing so well in these battleground state polls, not necessarily in the national polls, but what's really important are these battleground states, why is he repeating the claim over and over these past few days that the election is rigged?
Well, it's just so difficult for us to feel like we get a fair shake, respectfully. Every day we're hit. If you look at these objective content analysis, negative news about Donald Trump last week was covered 23 times more than the negative news about Hillary Clinton. And frankly, Mr. Trump is being asked to defend against allegations that he said are not true, whereas we hear very little that we know is true. In other words, nobody's denying that friends of Bill, VIPs of President Bill Clinton's got preferential treatment when the State Department, where his wife was the secretary, was handing out contracts post the Haiti earthquake in 2010. We know that the uranium rights, a pretty high percentage of uranium rights, were divvied out based on collusion and, frankly, based on favors. We know that Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a speech. It's very frustrating to not get, I would say, equal coverage.
But you're blaming the news media, saying that's a rigged system. He blames the entire system. He's not just blaming the news media, and that's a clear distinction, a clear difference.
Well, he's been looking over reports that people have presented to him about irregularities in some past elections, and he's been looking those over and wondering, you know, if in fact that could be replicated this time, particularly since he feels, and we feel, that we can't get a fair shake just by getting our message out. And look, what he's doing, you see it in your own CNN polling, it's working. He is going around the noise and around the silence, as the case may be, and taking the case directly to the voters. There's a reason that as I sit right here, he's on a plane to a couple swing states ahead of the debate on Wednesday, because he's got to connect directly to people. We can't trust the system to help us deliver our message.
Well, what evidence does he have that the voter, the system, the entire system is rigged? Because voter fraud is very rare by almost all studies.
He's mentioning a couple different things. He's saying that there could be irregularities at the polling places. Could be. He's saying that there's a collusion
clearly,
between now today.
What evidence does he have about that? Because it shows that there are tiny numbers of these kinds of irregularities.
Well, tiny in the past, but he's read those reports. And if you're Donald Trump and you feel like every single day you are facing lies and distortions and an avalanche of negative coverage, or I would say, put differently, incomplete coverage, as if there's only one person running for president and not two, then the frustration mounts and you wonder what could happen if people really want to stop you. But I'm saying that all he's saying is seeing these irregularities in the past that have been presented to him, tripled with, the collusion we see the Clintons are completely capable of, colluding now, we know just today, I think it's breaking news, colluding between the DOJ, the FBI, and the State Department, quote, written in email, quid pro quo. That's pretty clear. You don't need to speak Latin to know what that is.
The question is, and it's an important one, because a lot of his supporters are going to be reacting after November 8th, assuming, let's say he loses, will he accept the election as free and fair, which Mike Pence said yesterday he certainly would.
And I would, and Mr. Trump would, if they're absent overwhelming evidence of any kind of fraud or irregularities. Yes, and I know where this conversation is going in part, maybe not by you, but by others, Wolf, who go down the same path, which is, you know, will people be violent? Will they not accept the result? The only violence I saw in the last day was perpetrated on a Republican headquarters in North Carolina. Somebody firebombed it. I doubt it was a Republican. Firebombed it, wrote awful, disgusting things in graffiti. And frankly, Wolf, had somebody, God forbid, been in there at the time, they could have been maimed or killed. If you look at so there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of inciting, you know, words matter, and I would say that to my friends on the left as well.
We're going to have later this hour a full report on that firebomb at that Republican Party building in North Carolina, a full report coming up. But so far, authorities there say they have no idea, they don't know who is responsible, but Donald Trump immediately went out and blamed what he called animals representing Hillary Clinton and her campaign for that, based on no evidence.
Well, that's his position. But again, I mean, CNN for a week now plus has been covering things as if there is evidence. You've had accusers with their allegations given, I mean, in some cases, just half a show to go and talk. I've seen panels on CNN, sadly enough, Wolf, where people are calling Mr. Trump names that under the law you just could not say that. I mean, talk about opening up to liability. You can't say somebody is X if actually that's a charged legal term and you don't have the evidence of that. That's just a fact.
But Kellyanne, last week you yourself retweeted something Hillary Clinton said at one point. You said this, and I'll put it up there. This is your retweet. Every survivor of sexual assault deserves to be heard, believed, and supported. Here's the question. Does that apply to Donald Trump's accusers as well?
So what I was doing was retweeting it for retweeting Hillary Clinton's tweet while she was facing her husband's accuser, her husband's sexual victims at that second debate in St. Louis. But I will read the rest of her quote to you. Quote, I would say that everyone should be believed at first until they are disbelieved based on evidence. And I think that's a very important part of her quote, because that's the whole point here. Is the evidence somebody coming on a cable TV show and telling their story for 46 minutes, or is the evidence in a court of law? If these women want to lodge their complaints, they have avenues to do that. But I think, you know, we can't be faulted for thinking that there's a corrupt, rigged system, unfair to us, unfair to Mr. Trump, unfair to the campaign every day, because he is stuck defending against things that he says are not true and are totally negative 23 times more than Hillary Clinton, or I guess because she's not available now for a few days, anybody in her campaign is forced to address the negative information that we see right in front of us, evidence right in front of us, anti-Catholic bigotry, collusion and favoritism for Haiti contracts after the hurricane, certainly Russian favors. That's very concerning. And today we saw a request by a State Department lieutenant very high up.
We'll get to that in a moment. But why do you believe voters should believe that Bill Clinton's accusers, there are several of them, they should believe Bill Clinton's accusers, but not Donald Trump's accusers?
No, what I've said is I think that people should believe, the people should at least be able to assess them. And Hillary Clinton was not forced to answer that question that was posed to her in that debate last week. She was not forced by anybody there to continue and to actually acknowledge them and answer for her conduct toward them, not her husband's, but her conduct toward them. The naming and the shaming, as crisply pointed out in a New York Times article about a week and a half ago, days after they endorsed Hillary Clinton for president, the New York Times very deftly laid out Hillary Clinton's modus operandi. It was always to blame and shame the women. Go find maybe men that they had been with and show that they're really not decent women, try to make their lives miserable. In some cases, these women say their lives were ruined. And so that is relevant because it goes to her character. But these women got nearly no airtime compared to the airtime that was been given on CNN and other places, Wolf, to the accusers of Donald Trump. I mean, it's simply unfair and it's imbalanced. And look, your CNN statewide polls today show that people aren't buying it.
Kellyanne, I was CNN senior White House correspondent in 1998, 1999, 2000, when these women, including, of course, Monica Lewinsky herself, got tons and tons and tons of airtime. You remember those days. I remember those days.
But what about here?
We all remember those days. We went through all of those cases, these women who have come forward, and we gave them a lot of reporting time. But quickly to the women who have accused Donald Trump of sexual assault or sexual misconduct, are you it sounds like you're almost encouraging them to go to court to prove what they say. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not encouraging anyone. Women can do what they want. They're free to do what they want. Well, what I'm saying is I encourage responsible outlets like CNN to at least give balanced coverage. And, respectfully, stories that were covered 18 years ago because Bill Clinton was president as they were happening because he gave $850,000 to Paula Jones to settle a sexual harassment suit. The last time I didn't sexually harass someone here at the Trump campaign, I didn't pay him $850,000 either. But now the relevance is she's running for president. And what was her conduct toward those women? So I would argue it's all fresh content just to see how she treated those women. This woman who says she's a champion for women, is that all women? This woman who says she's a champion for children. We have millions of them living in poverty. She's been in public life for 30 years. Now, your own Anderson Cooper interviewed Melania Trump. It will run tonight on CNN. I sat through that interview, and you will hear Mrs. Trump tell your own Anderson Cooper at CNN that she believes her husband, and she thinks people fabricate lies for financial or political reasons or for fame, and that her husband has denied them, and she's standing by him. And I think it's a very important insight into Donald Trump.
So, Kellyanne, you believe these 9 women who have come forward in the past few days are all lying for whatever goals they have, financial goals or whatever?
I'm not saying that. What I'm telling you is Mr. Trump is the only person who can confirm or deny it, and he has denied it. These allegations are about him. He has denied them. And I'm saying that they should get the same. I think that they get plenty of hearing. Goodness. The other women, the accusers, the people who are